Hey guys, Dratta Arcana here, and this will be the second time I've recorded this, so let's just get right into it. First off, let me just tell you that the last video that I did, I forgot to check the audio and it didn't record. So let's just jump into this as quick as I possibly can. So hopefully I can get this information out here. There's been a lot of misinformation on YouTube about builds, about the meta, and so forth. The first thing I want to state is that this bow and dual sword meta needs to stop, and that was something that just needs to happen. I am a big fan of bow, but that is about it. It's just because I played bow during my time as a Monster Hunter player, and I want to get this out of the way. Let's stop this bow dual swords meta. The other weapons need your attention as well, and they need exploration. Okay, the first thing I want to address is the big one, is Dexterity. Well, actually, first let's just address the Death Game Hard Mode Normal. Okay, there is no difference between these difficulties on what drops and what doesn't. There's been a lot of misinformation regarding the drops as far as Death Game Hard Mode and Normal. There's no difference. What drops on Normal will drop on Hard. The only thing that Death Game and Hard do is up the difficulty of the monster and increases the material drop rate. The material drop rate. That means that the drop rate for your hard slate, Dia slate, and so forth, those are the things that are dropping, and those have an increased drop rate on the higher difficulties. This does not change what kind of Heaven Striker you get, what kind of other weapons you get. So it doesn't change the type of Skyrend you get. In other words, those of you guys playing on hard mode and Death Game, you're just doing it to show off and it looks bad. Okay, the next thing I want to address is Dexterity. This stat has been so misrepresented by everyone non-stop. Okay, first off, you need a Dexterity of 175 or higher to play on hard mode. There is no reason to be absurd about Dexterity. The reason is that your accuracy, as you can see, my accuracy is 185. This accuracy is more than enough to hit everything in the game. If you are trying to play with a Dexterity build, you are doing yourself a disservice, and you should pay more close attention to what I am about to cover. So the thing is that this stat has been very, very heavily misrepresented and is not the most efficient stat in the game. That needs to stop. This is what I'm going to pay attention to. As you can see, something like Strike Nova requires 110% strength and 50% agility. That means that your primary stat for that skill is strength and agility. That is how the modifiers happen. If I had a Dexterity build, Strike Nova would do next to nothing, Hail of Bullets would do a good amount of damage, and Fixed Pier would do next to nothing. Fixed Pier has a higher agility stat than Hail of Bullets, as in an additional 50% for agility and 2 additional hits. They have roughly the same speed, meaning that they do the exact same amount of speed, but Fixed Pier hits harder. Also, the reason why I say that building for your main stats is more important is because there's this lovely thing called customized gear. As you can see, my customized equipment uses a Dexterity to Dexterity pieces. This boosts my Dexterity while using Hail of Arrows to 236, so I am able to do damage. Once again, the misinformation on Dexterity builds needs to stop. The accuracy that you need to hit all Divine Beasts is roughly 160, same with Raids. The only Divine Beast that I know of that requires a higher Dexterity is, of course, the Mantis, which requires a 180 Dexterity, but even still at 160, I hit it about 75% of the time, which with a higher attack stat, I am dealing more damage. So that's one of the big misrepresentations right now in the meta, is what kind of accuracy you really need. Having over 200 accuracy does not do you very much good, because if you're playing on hard mode or Death Game, you are doing yourself a disservice, and we should leave that to the actual pros and let them data mine it. Another thing I'm going to mention here is that YouTube videos on builds needs to stop without research. There have been a lot of hazard builds for bow going around, which are efficient at hazarding monsters, but it is absolute crap in raids. I have tried hazarding in raid with a hazard build. It does not go over well. I build very, very slowly on hazard on raid bosses, and I almost have never seen them hazard. The only time I have seen them hazard is when I was in a group with 2 other bow users, all of us using hazards, and that is we got 1 hazard. Congratulations! Your hazard build with 3 other bow users, the best hazarding weapon in the game, attributes to nothing. Meaning that building your build for damage over hazard during raids is more effective. I will say that hazarding Divine Beast is the must-go-to strategy, and I can solo Divine Beast just fine with the amount of damage that I put out. As such, I want to draw attention to my attack stat. You need to be building for attack. Whatever your attack is, that means that is the most damage that you are going to deal. But while that might be an efficient method, you also have to pay very close attention to what percentage of a skill that you are going to be using. The big thing that we need to understand is that, yes, there are weapons in the game that require different stats. For example, let's look at the Rapier. As you can see, Quadruple Pain, your best damage dealer for Rapier, from what I heard, is a Dexterity AGL skill. As you can see, your finisher is also Dexterity AGL for your extra skill, or your EX skill. This means that you should be building Dexterity AGL for Rapier. Different weapons will require a different build. Dagger is also very Dexterity AGL based, so you should be focusing your build on Dexterity AGL. If you are but as for the meta, which is mostly dual sword and bow, you should be building Strength AGL. And as you can see, the Steel Riding Armor is probably the best armor for the meta, simply because it gives strength and agility. Another thing that is highly miscalculated is there's no such thing as a permanent incarnation. I have tested this, I have researched it, I have talked with people who have tested it. There is no such thing as a permanent incarnation. All that does is that it decreases the amount of counters that you need in order for it to die. As you can see, this one counter has a 2% chance. In other words, incarnations are nearly a waste of your time unless you are using them inside of your actual customization gear. Okay, another big misrepresentation that is going around is chain burst damage and how to actually give proper numbers as far as damage. People need to stop giving these 20 million numbers because they are giving the chain burst number. The chain burst number means crap. Literally, it is crap. And I am very upset about, as you can tell, about how the meta has been approached, because I am very upset about it. So let's go into this. Your chain burst number can be anywhere between 500,000 to 2 million at any one time. The reason is that the moment that you hit a chain burst, the counter starts, and as long as you time it right, you can get that chain burst damage up to 20 million, no problem, by utilizing super arts. So, if you're using super arts, or you hit a finisher during a chain burst, that number is going to be highly fluctuated. That is not your actual damage. A sword skill, you can hit 20 million damage by having a sword skill do only 1 million. I encourage that people that are giving out these 20 million damage videos will actually tell us their sword skill number, because I have never seen a sword skill hit 20 million. I have heard of a sword skill hitting 9 million with dual blades, and that is the only weapon that I have heard of so far that can hit 9 million. Meaning that most likely his damage on chain burst would be around 20 million. You cannot get a sword skill to go higher than that as far as I have seen. If people are getting their sword skills to do 20 million, I would like to know in the comments below. But If you're going to be giving out a build to people, please make sure you give accurate representation on what that damage is. Please give the sword skill number. The sword skill number is going to tell us exactly what your damage output is and is not a misrepresentation. Another thing to note, dual blades is not an accurate representation of what a damage can actually be on every other weapon. Dual blades is unique because of the fact that it does double damage when it hits. A number on a dual blade can be 100,000 because it's hitting for 250,000. And thus it has to calculate that. Dual blades is not an accurate representation of damage and should be stopped immediately until you fully understand what it can actually do. On my dual blades, I have hit a starburst stream of 2 million. That is because it does double damage of bow, because it's actually calculating 2 weapons simultaneously, not 1. Thus, a bow that does 1 million damage is doing the same amount of damage as dual sword that is doing 2 million. They're doing the same amount of damage, it just happens to be that dual sword is miscalculating. I would hope that they would patch this, so that way dual blades is not so overpowered, because it effectively does double damage of what it should. But as of right now, it is the best meta weapon. Okay, another big misrepresentation right now in the meta is this dual blade and bow stuff needs to stop. There is no guaranteed build for everything and anything. So people need to address these issues and actually explore things like two-handed and dagger. There are potentially hidden potential in every weapon, and we need to find out what the best builds are. That's enough on the builds. Let's talk about raids. Raids are one of the most confusing things to figure out. Note that each raid drops a set of weapons. Each weapon type has 2 weapons that drop from the 4 raids, and each raid drops a ring. There are also accessories in certain chests throughout the 4 different raids, and each one of those gives different stats. The best possible rings and accessories I have found so far are the Ring of Tranquility and the Abyssal Gauntlets. The Abyssal Gauntlets is in a chest where you kill a snail thingy near one of the crystals. You have to literally use Tailwind to get to it. It is probably one of the better accessories because it comes with Rising Spirit. Ring of Tranquility is probably one of the best rings in the game and drops from the final boss of the Ice Dungeon. It has a really low drop rate. I have tried for 100 times and only saw 1. The best weapons by far overall are most likely going to be the 3 statted weapons, but if they come with Dexterity, please know that Dexterity on most of them are going to be useless unless that is your priority stat for most of your skills. Next up is Armor. Okay, you can equip things like the White Mist Armor, as I'm about to show you right here, right now. As you can see, the White Mist Armor, if I can find it, because I have every armor in the game, White Mist Armor has Unfreezing Spirit. On critical, hazard gauge plus 50%. This is not as significant as you might think because you're taking a massive damage loss. Sacrificing your damage for something as simple as better control on most fights is pointless because you will kill the enemy before they can hazard. I don't need to hazard anything on most relics because they just die. As far as anything else, okay, let's talk about skills actually, because I want to address this. First off, most skills that you should always have for damage output if you want to maximize damage are things like Shadow Warrior, Rising Spirit, and Abyssal Reflection. These all need to be really addressed because Shadow Warrior actually decreases your defense by 20% and increases your attack by 20%. Abyssal Reflection only looks at your defense and converts 15% of that into attack. Berserker does the same thing as Shadow Warrior. As such, you basically get 40% attack but 40% less defense. Okay, let's talk about why attack is important. First off, if you are dealing maximum damage, you most likely have a very high attack. But once again, these numbers can fluctuate. All of your stats will fluctuate based on the skills you use and based on everything else. So let's actually address one of the other common misconceptions, and that is what is the best persona and best anima. The best anima is actually uptight. Luxor does you no good because you can just eat a food for 25% drop rate, which guarantees all Divine Beast drops. Fiery increases your critical hit rate by 50%, and that is fantastic. There is a skill on a dagger called Tiger's Resolve that increases your critical rate by 50% and increases your critical damage by 50%. This does not guarantee critical hits, but the only way to actually get that onto you is to actually equip the dagger, activate Tiger's Resolve, then equip the weapon of your choice. It does not transfer no matter what you do. There is a glitch that causes it to transfer. If you have that glitch, kudos to you, but it does not work for everyone. Okay, next up, let's talk about why strength should be everyone's priority stat no matter what build you're using. Strength increases your attack, which in turn increases your damage output. Granted, you have to find a balance between strength and dexterity in VIT builds or dexterity in AGL builds. Most strength and agility builds won't have to worry about their strength because most of the best gear gives strength and agility. Let's talk about evasion. Evasion, another very heavily misrepresented stat, is basically a random chance. The higher it is, the higher likely you are to get a good roll on a dodge. This does not matter against most divine beasts and so forth until you get it above 200. As such, mine is 198, so I still get hit at least half the time. Until your evasion is above 250, you will not dodge everything. As such, having higher hit pool is very important, but as you can see, I have 18,000 health, and evasion is at 198. I am a bow user, so this does not matter. But when I switch over to dual blade, as I am about to show you, as soon as I can find my dual swords, you will see that my stats will be heavily fluctuated. This is because dual swords gains stats from two different weapons. And that is because of the fact that you have two weapons equipped. This is why that dual blades needs a semi-nerf to basically cool it down. As you can see, my attack is roughly the same as when I had it equipped to a bow. My accuracy is now 228 because I have 216 dexterity because Skyrend gives me dexterity times 2, giving me 80 dexterity. As you can see, my strength is 341 and my agility is 327 with an evasion of 205. Once this evasion hits 200, I can dodge most enemy attacks. Okay, so basically, one last thing that is a common misrepresentation is your bond. As you can see, my stats are very high with my Skyrend, with my two Skyrends, but as you can see, my bond with them is absolute crud. Please do not judge your damage based on a low bond. Your low bond just means that you are going to deal less damage because you are not bonded with that weapon. Bond is mandatory to raise the max. If you are having trouble hitting an enemy or dealing sufficient damage, it is because your bond is nearly nil. So, what do? Well, you need to raise your bond. How you do that? Very simple. Divine Beast hunts. Just fight all the Relic Beasts, then fight the Divine Beast. You will get bond a lot faster that way because you are fighting multiple monsters with lots of hit pool. Okay. So, what is the best weapon right now in the game? This is a null answer. There is no such thing. There is no such thing as the best build right now because we have not been able to maximize damage. Whatever does the most damage is most likely going to be the highest damage output, and that is just a fact. So everyone needs to understand that the highest damage dealing build is most likely going to be priority because raids require a higher damage threshold and so forth. Other than that, there is not much else to this video other than I wanted to bring to attention all the misinformation about builds and how things actually operate in a very brief video. Otherwise, guys, I'm pretty much going to get out of here. I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention because there is so much misinformation right now. Can I please encourage people to double check their stuff before releasing a video and telling the world, hey, this is the best thing in the world, because bull. I'm just going to call bull on that, and basically there is no such thing as a best build right now. People are still hunting for it, and the best build on Death Game is not the best build on normal, and vice versa. However, please note that people playing on Death Game are most likely trying to find a build that actually works on Death Game, not that they are trying to be better than everyone. Let's leave the Death Game players to figure out what's most effective on Death Game, because right now Death Game is currently next to impossible. You cannot kill a Relic Beast on Death Game because it's literally level 100 something. That is not an accurate representation of what everyone should be using. Most players are playing on normal because there is no reason to play on hard in Death Game. Until we actually get a reason, let's hold off on builds that are heavily dexterity based until we can confirm the actual accuracy thresholds, because that is what people are going to have to build for, is their accuracy threshold. Once you meet the minimum accuracy threshold for the difficulty, you no longer need to build for accuracy. Accuracy is one of those stats where once it reaches the threshold, there is no reason to go beyond the threshold. Anyways, guys, that's pretty much going to cover it. I'm going to get out of here. Thanks for watching, and if this is your first time watching the video and you made it to this point, listening to me ramble, feel free to subscribe and like the video. Otherwise, guys, take care.